Welcome to PseudoPod, the weekly horror podcast. What follows is horror fiction read in tooth and claw, and not for the faint-hearted. Consider yourself warned. PseudoPod, episode 754, April 23rd, 2021. This week's stories: Flash on the Borderlands 55, The Easily Digested Hurt. Welcome to Flash on the Borderlands 55. We actually have a subtitle quote for this one. A fantasy the way it could. A picture of us in a dream. Hold those thoughts. I'm Alistair, your host, and this week's stories could safely be summed up by that quote, left carved with an elegant hand and a curiously sharp implement into the stone of PseudoPod Towers by editorial. As ever, these stories are horror. Please proceed with caution. Because after all, they're all true. Our first story this week is Step Down, Step Down by Alexandra Duncan. This is a PseudoPod original. Alexandra is an author and librarian whose YA SF novels Salvage, Sound and Blight are available now, and whose short fiction has appeared in countless markets. We'll have more details of Alexandra's experience in the show notes. Your reader for this story is Tina Connolly, one of our regular hosts over at Escape Pod, and a phenomenal horror author in her own right. I cannot recommend her anthology, Stories from the Eyeball Floor, enough. So, like I say, time for a true story.
Step Down, by Alexandra Duncan. You've heard the ballads of young women murdered, drowned down by the river banks. I am one such maid. He asked me once to be his love. He asked it 2 and 3. I never knew my answer would be the death of me. Sometimes we are killed by brigands, other times by a cruel sister, but most often by our lovers. We are always rosy-cheeked and demure. We die beautiful and tragic, and our murderer sings his lament from the gallows. He regrets it, but he had no choice. Fate drove his hand. Perhaps he even placed a posy in our cold grip as we lay among the long grass. As for me, step down and I will tell you. Was I murdered by a draught of poisoned wine? A rapier through my breast? A blow to the head as I stood gazing at the way the light of the late afternoon turned the river to molten gold? What did I think of in those final moments? The sweet drop of honeysuckle as he pinched the bloom and touched the stamen to my tongue? The way the leaves show their pale underbellies in a storm? My little sister slipping her small feet into my shoes? Step down among the reeds and I will tell you. I always heard tell of angel bands and welcoming arms on the other side, but instead I find myself here. In the winter, ice clings to the rocks along the bank and the water is frigid. Its surface is gray as my skin, gray as the sky, and below my hair streams slick as the currents. Not even the fish and frogs keep me company. They are rooted down in the mud, waiting for a friendlier season. But then summer comes, and the pollywogs and minnows, and young men such as yourself. The water never grows much warmer. Put your feet in. See? But I remember what it was to be warm, and I remember I used to sing. Listen to the cicadas. Do you hear them? They were thrumming at my back the day I died, their sound thickening the air. If you listen hard enough, you will hear me humming behind their voices. Won't you step in with me? Further, up to your knees? The chill isn't so bad once you grow accustomed to it and the water is clear. See the little fish nibbling at your feet? They must like the taste of you. It's been so long since someone lent me a listening ear. Time it will come and it will go, for all men it draws near. But there's no time for a poor drowned maid, she ever lingers here. Do you dream of love? I dreamed of it once, too. Pushing open the garden gate by moonlight. Eyes large and dark with desire, or the dim, or both. Hurried hands and hair, on buttons, on skin. I never dreamed the bruises on my arm, those same eyes charged with hate. Perhaps I should have looked harder, been more exacting in my choices. Come down by the riverside, he said. Come walk with me. And I did, because I loved him. Because I knew what would happen if he found himself disappointed. If I'd said no, you might have come across me wandering our old house with the rocking chair porch that bowed in the middle, instead of here by the water. Isn't it strange how the cold feels almost warm after a time? Sometimes I lie back and let myself float along the surface. Let the current carry me what feels like miles. But then I look up, and I'm here still, in the same place. Try it. See? There used to be a poplar tree there by the bank before they cut it down. I died beneath its branches, but I never held it against the tree. My blood made it no less beautiful. Won't you take my hand? It's so kind of you to stay with me. I've been so lonely, especially in the cold months when no one visits the river. Look up at the sky, at the way the clouds make pictures and cast shadows on the water. That one looks like a hammer, don't you think? And that one, a coffin. You can tell me about yourself. Did you love a maid such as me? It is what I am, is it not? Did you ever do her wrong? Or would you have done in time? So many men swear they would not, but we never know what we might do until it's done. You aren't thinking of going yet, are you? Do not struggle. You know I would never leave you. Sink down. Breathe deep. We have all the time in the world. Come down to the riverbed and give your hand to me. Step down to the waters clear, your true love for to see.
Welcome to the barb inside the barb. Welcome to the moment where you keep talking even when you're not thinking. The thing you've become, the shape that has assumed your own, talking with your own voice even as it does things you would never do. Just a little closer. Just a little. You can hear better then. Hear the truth. But what is the truth? That this is a mask over a murderous idea? Or is that just one more polite lie to cover the sound of someone drowning? Perhaps this is what we all are. It's just that only some of us are unlucky enough to be shown that. And once shown it, well, then it's no longer a picture of a dream, is it? It's just a ripple on a pond, lasting as long as it takes to reach the shore. If it, and we, are allowed to. And that brings us to Snip, Snip, Snip by Matt Thompson. Matt Thompson is a London-based experimental musician and writer of strange stories. He is way, way behind on his to-be-read pile, aren't we all? A situation he currently finds himself unable to rectify. His work has been published at Interzone, Nature, Futures, Black Static, and many more worthy venues. Matt talks a little bit after the story about the inspiration for this, so I'm going to let him speak for himself. Your narrator for this one is the amazing Kat Day, one of our regular PseudoPod staff, and as someone who grew up in the UK in the 70s and 80s, there is more truth to this than you might think.
Snip, Snip, Snip by Matt Thompson. Narrated by Kat Day. Ginny came into school today with half her thumb missing. Her mum had bandaged it okay. You couldn't see much blood, and Ginny told us it didn't hurt, not really. She wouldn't let on what she'd done, though. Not even when Jordan squeezed the wound to make her tell. It can't have been anything too bad. If it had been, she'd have lost more fingers than she did. "The snipper's coming back for the rest," Jordan taunted until one of the teachers dragged him off to detention. Ginny was so scared she was sent home for the day. She'll be okay, though. They say the snipper only visits you once. No one's ever seen him. Jordan said he woke up in the middle of it when it happened to him. The snipper's hair was made of razor wire, he said, and his teeth made of piano keys, and his fingernails sharpened into box cutter blades. He ended up with one thumb and a pinky finger gone. We all think he's telling stories to distract from the way his scars look like cats' faces. Maybe he drowned one. Who knows? The snipper knows. Mo, in year 6, lost the top half of both thumbs. That's worse than losing all of one. Now he has to hold his pencil between his first and middle fingers, and when he writes, it looks like he's back in year 1 again. Ginny said he'd stolen 50p off one of the juniors, and that was why the snipper came for him. Already his stumps are healing into sharp edges, like a 50p piece, so maybe she's right. Still, she can talk. We'll find out her crime soon enough, when the scars form. But me? I don't think I've done anything so bad. Well, maybe sometimes. When I was 6, I told Mum that my little cousin Suki stole a packet of biscuits that I'd taken myself. I didn't say anything when Auntie Vicky made Suki apologise, even when she started crying. Is that enough for the snipper? Or that time I pushed Philippe into the school pond? Or when I told Mum I wished Dad had taken me with him when he left? All the parents and teachers just tried to pretend it's not happening. Doesn't seem to be working. Praying doesn't help either. So when the snipper finally comes for me, it'll almost be a relief. I even kind of want to know what the worst thing I've ever done is. Maybe that'll hurt more than the snipping. But at least it'll be over with. Unless I do something else to make him angry. Jordan's been limping lately. "Stubbed my toe," he said when I asked. "Yeah?" He didn't answer, just winced, and wouldn't look at me, and hobbled away with one foot dragging sideways, like he was walking on knives.
Here's what Matt had to say. This story was inspired by The Finishing Line, a British public information film from 1977 directed by documentary maker John Krish. The film imagines a school sports day in which teams of youngsters variously dash across railway tracks, only to be mown down by speeding locomotives, hurl colour-coded bricks at passing passenger trains, the subsequent mayhem tallied by stern-faced adjudicators, march blithely into long tunnels as trains enter from the other direction, and more. All the while, kindly teachers usher them towards oblivion and keep a scoreboard tally of the dead. Pretty much every child who saw it on the few occasions it was shown, including myself, was scarred for life. The true horror of the film is the upending of the certainties children are taught, that adults are there to shield you from danger rather than encourage you into it, and that punishments for misdeeds should be proportional. The painful life lesson it teaches is that cruelty is both random and, more than likely, inevitable. Matt clearly saw some of the same public information films I did. However, I suspect his were rather more full-blooded even than the ones I was subjected to. Children risking life and limb and failing, even as their horrific exploded metaphor of a cat preached road safety, and Darth Vader's parallel universe good twin helped the lucky kids across the road, but only once, only ever once. The UK in the 1970s and 80s was a landscape children picked their way across, never a playground. Certainly not one you'd want to be on after dark. Look at Scarfolk, look at Hookland, look at this story. Oh, and the two stories I have, both unconfirmed, both hanging over my school like a held scream. The one about the boy quietly shipped off to long-term therapy after being found licking melted chocolate off his dog's stomach. The other about the kid who wanted to find out what petrol looked like when it was alight and never took his shirt off in front of other people at games again. Are either true? Almost certainly not. I know both of them. Neither one of them mentioned anything of the sort, and neither one of them went on to have the sort of life that these type of horrific narratives would lead you to believe. But that's not the point. The point is, some of these stories always are true. Like the one about the kids who shared which bus stop was safe to sleep in. Or the one about friends of mine placing road lights in a field in the early hours of the morning, noticing people burying a small box further up the hill at 3 a.m. in a field. They decided to leave. Just like here, there's no panic, no terror, just politely avoiding what you hope is the eyeline of what you hope is the person looking at you. Nightmares in polyester school jumpers, blood staining the dull yellow plastic handles of a pair of safety scissors. Snip, snip, snip. And that brings us, at last, to My Guests by Glyn Forsyth. This story can be considered a reprint, as an earlier draft was actually put up on the SF Chronicles website. And once again, Glyn has some notes for us, which we'll get to after the story. Your reader for this is Carlo Yeager Rodriguez, who was born and raised on the enchanting island of Puerto Rico, but moved to Baltimore some years back, where he lives happily with his spouse and one odd dog. His writing has appeared in places like Nature, Uncanny, Beneath Ceaseless Skies, and his forthcoming and speculative fiction for dreamers, a Latinx anthology. Find more of Carlo's writing at his website, which we will leave for you in the show notes. One more time. One more true story.
My Guests by Glyn Forsyth. Narrated by Carlo Yeager Rodriguez. 6 and Tenny wiggle at me as I stare into the hole. They are tiny and perfect, emerging from the dark while the owners cower in the safe space I provide. I won't let anyone hurt you, little wigglers. You're safe with me. It doesn't hurt the hole. It's just a little gap in my shin. The skin around it slightly pink and shiny like scar tissue. It goes quite deep, I think, but I don't want to shine a light down there and panic my guests. They panic enough when I stand up, and Tenny waving wildly at the motion. I wear loose cotton trousers to work. They aren't really uniform, but I'm a favorite with Helen, so I get away with it. I don't do good work today. I'm too concerned about my guests suddenly in a new environment out of my flat. I'm also feeling paranoid about my walk. Does it look funny? It feels like my left leg is lighter than my right, as though it's been hollowed out. It's okay if it has. I like being a good home, but I know my colleagues wouldn't understand. I suddenly can't bear the thought of questions, or worse, prodding fingers. I leave early. I buy a lot of food on my way home. Trying to work was too much. I'll call in sick for a while and stay inside. Make certain my little charges are safe. They are uninterested in any of the food I offer them. Sugary, fatty, protein. I lie on the lawn outside in the evening sunshine and doze off for a moment. When I wake, there's a small bare patch beside my leg where all the grass is gone. I'm glad. The next morning, I stand up. I look down expecting to see the panic wiggle once more, but instead, the hole is plugged completely by a darker round head with a threatening nozzle. They've started to develop different casts. This must be a big step. I feel a parental pride pooling under my ribs. Both legs feel light today, bringing my gait back into balance. I only walk down the stairs, though, and settle on the grass again. I eat sandwiches as I sit and watch the hole be tentatively unplugged. Then one small form after another negotiate the hairs on my leg to bring back a snip of grass. They are so brave, these tiny creatures in such a big world. I read about termites. I don't know if my tenants are termites, but they could be. I learned a queen could live for 50 years. That their mounds have a hard skin and chambers for lungs. I have a soft skin, hard center, and I have my own lungs. I will be a better home. The little guys and girls snipping grass by my leg are so coordinated. They bump, smell, and pass each other constantly to form a living conveyor belt. Does any one individual know their plan? Does it even make sense to think of an individual termite? These are my teeth, chewing and pulling nutrients into me. I've often regretted that my landlord lives upstairs from me. He heard the crash as the window fell out last night. I would have lived without the glass for a while and been happy, but he sees where the wood was eaten away. Termites, he tells me. I'll get pest control in as soon as I can. I tire of his apologies and usher him out. You're looking good at least, he tells me on the way, like a consolation prize. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. I'll have to leave. Even inside me, they might not be safe from toxic treatments. I start to pack, but most of my clothes no longer fit. I'm no heavier, but my skin feels tight. My landlord is right, though. I do look good. My skin is clear, my eyes shine. I have a purpose. I don't need to pack to fulfill that purpose, so I leave all of my belongings and start walking. I almost bounce as I walk. I feel so light and brimming with life. The extra holes that have appeared over my arms and upper body are each plugged by a dark head. They look like moles or beauty spots. They are beautiful to me, these little entrances and their guards. This first night, I realize I no longer feel the cold. Thousands of tiny generators keep me warm from the inside out. I walk until my legs warn me they're about to give up, then find a park with some trees to shelter underneath. I wake up on a bare patch of earth, feeling satiated, drink greedily at a water fountain, and keep going. The second night, I find a nicer park. I'm still in the city, but moving through a richer area near the river. I'm awakened by an unsympathetic boot. You can't sleep here, says a policeman. Looks like you were lying on an ant nest anyway. He and his partner haul me to my feet and try to brush me down. I panic for a moment. I don't want to leave so many of my tiny warts behind alone in this park. At my panic, I feel movement on my skin. Liquid jets squirt into each of the two faces near mine. An acrid whiff makes my eyes sting and water, but it's nothing compared to the reaction of the two police. They release me and drop, curling up with hands in their eyes. The smell calls to the workers on the ground. and they swarm back to me. Their militant siblings stand agitated guard, waiting for trouble, ready to fire again. We are gone before the policemen recover. We escape the city, but find farms instead. There is so little wildland now where we could be safe. The threat of people and pesticides surrounds me. I will keep going. I will keep them safe. I feel a message of satisfaction from within, pride at my determination. Later, how much later, I no longer know nor care. I roll along a pine needle carpet between dense, straight trunks. My thousands of mouths reach out into the world around us. I keep them, and they keep me. Company, safety, home. They are all within and without me. I see no people, but we are not lonely.
We are not lonely. A giant crawling brain that discovers the best way to subsume the biological uniqueness of its host is to be reasonable, reassuring, friendly even. Do you want to go to a place where everyone knows your name? How about one where everyone is you, where identity is a shared burden, a pack mentality instead of the mentality of a pack? How horrific, how alien, how oddly comforting, how much like a picture of us in a dream. All of us. Thank you all to our readers and our writers for the week, and thank you to you for listening. We're now paying associate editors who are slosh readers in the first line of contact for every magazine and author. They are the unsung heroes of the industry, and it's time we sung them. We're currently paying all 4 shows associate editors at a reduced rate because we aren't quite at the target donation yet. But it was time to just get this done. So we still need your help, especially as, in addition, you also pay for literally everything else. Stories, staff, you name it. So if you do donate, thank you. And if you want to donate, please consider donating either time or money. For time, it's easy. Did you like the story? Then talk about it on social media. Leave a review. Anything like that helps like you would not believe. Money, literally the only thing that helps more. You can subscribe and get free audio goodies galore from as little as $5 a month through either Patreon or PayPal. And if you have Amazon Prime, with 5 minutes you could support us with $5 a month through that for free. It's a little fiddly, so go to escapeartists.net/Twitch and find out more. Next week, Marty's on the decks, I'm on the mic, Alan Baxter's on the words with Exquisite, and Dan Raybarts is on narration. Then, as now, will be a production of Escape Artists Incorporated and released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license. And we leave you with this quote from tragically cut short TV show Braindead. So, I can't tell you 100% whether global warming is real. But doggy woggy. There is doggy woggy. Thanks a lot, folks. Have fun.
It's a pseudopod. It's a big foot.
It's all about podcasts these days.